There is a specific kind of silence that follows betrayal. Not the silence of an empty room, not the silence of a peaceful night. It is the silence of something breaking inside you so slowly, so quietly, that by the time you realize what happened, it has already been over for a long time. I have experienced a lot of things in my life: failure, loss, disappointment, but nothing, absolutely nothing prepares you for the moment you look across a table at your own brother and realize that the person sitting there has been planning against you for months. Not a stranger, not a coworker, not someone you barely knew, your brother. The person who grew up in the same house, who sat at the same dinner table, who knew your fears and your dreams and every single reason why that company meant so much to you. That's what made it different. That's what made it cut so deep. Our company didn't start with investors or a business plan or some brilliant idea written on a whiteboard. It started with two broke guys in a small apartment, one laptop between them, and a shared stubbornness to not give up. We didn't have money in those early years. We had arguments and exhaustion and weeks where we lived on bad coffee and worse food. But we also had something most companies never have. We had trust. Real trust, the kind you only build with someone you've known your whole life. Marcus, my brother, was the face of things. He talked to clients, handled negotiations, kept people calm in the room. I was the one who stayed behind. The numbers, the contracts, the details, that was my world. We complemented each other perfectly. Or at least, that's what I believed. For 6 years, we built that company into something real, something that actually worked. We had a team, we had clients who depended on us, and we had a name in our industry that we'd earned the hard way. Everything we had, we built together, and the deal we made from the very beginning was simple: 50-50, no exceptions, no asterisks at the bottom of the page. That's why I didn't question the documents. 8 months before any of this came apart, Marcus called me into the office on a Tuesday afternoon. Nothing dramatic. He was eating a sandwich, looking at his phone, and he slid a folder across the desk without even looking up. Said it was routine administrative stuff, business registration updates, something about state compliance. He used the right words, the kind that sound boring enough that you stop reading and just sign. I trusted him, so I signed. That was the moment, right there, that Tuesday afternoon with the half-eaten sandwich and the casual shrug. That was when everything began to shift, and I didn't even feel it. The night it all came out was a Thursday. Nothing about it felt unusual. I got a message from Marcus around 8 in the evening saying he wanted me to come by. No urgency, no strange tone, just come by when you can. So I drove over. When I pulled up, the front door opened before I even got out of the car. Marcus was standing there, already waiting. And I remember thinking that was strange. He never did that. He was the kind of person who yelled from 3 rooms away that the door was open. But that night, he was at the door, watching me walk up. Inside, 2 cups of coffee were already on the table. That small detail stayed with me. He had made the coffee before I arrived, which meant he had already decided how this conversation was going to start. He had prepared for it. We sat down. Neither of us spoke for a moment. The coffee was still steaming. Outside, a car passed on the street. Someone's dog was barking somewhere down the block. Small, normal sounds that felt completely out of place. Then Marcus said, "I need you to listen before you react." That sentence, those 9 words, I had never heard my brother say that to me before, and the moment he said it, something in my chest went very still, because that kind of sentence has only one purpose. It isn't something you say before good news. It isn't something you say before a normal conversation. You say it when you already know that what you're about to say is going to hurt someone, and you're asking them in advance to swallow it quietly. I didn't say anything. I just looked at him. He set his coffee down, took a slow breath, then said, I sold the company. 4 words. I remember the exact feeling of hearing them. Not panic, not rage, just this strange hollow pause, like the audio in the room dropped out for a second and everything went white. My brain registered the words but couldn't attach them to reality because they didn't make sense. You don't sell something that belongs to 2 people without telling the other person. You don't do that. I waited for him to keep talking, to explain, to say there was some emergency I didn't know about, some reason this happened so fast. He didn't say anything. So I asked very quietly, "When were you planning to tell me?" And he said, "I'm telling you now." There was nothing emotional in how he said it. No guilt, no regret, just that clean, prepared answer, the kind you practice before a conversation because you've already decided how you're going to handle it. He wasn't confessing, he was informing me, like you inform someone that a meeting got moved or a package arrived. I leaned forward slightly. "Okay," I said, "so how does that work?" He shifted in his seat, just slightly, but I noticed. "Some things changed a few months ago." Changed. That word. "How much did it change?" I asked. He paused. Then, 60-40. I kept my face completely neutral. 60 for you? He nodded. I leaned back, didn't speak, just let that sit in the air between us for a second. And then I asked about the sale. Full buyout, he said. Clean exit. Everything settled. And the money? I asked. Another pause, longer this time. I already received it. Everything crystallized in that moment. Not 60-40 going forward, not a decision about the future. He had already changed the ownership percentage months ago using those documents I signed on that Tuesday afternoon without reading. And then he had sold the company, received the full payment, and only after all of it was done and finished and irreversible did he invite me over for coffee and decide to tell me. He didn't come to me with a decision to make together, he came to deliver a result. I stood up slowly, no raised voice, no dramatic moment, just stood up, picked up my phone and said, "You should call your lawyer." He frowned. "What? Why?" "Because," I said, "I'm going to call mine." And that's when his expression changed. For the first time that night, something moved behind his eyes, a flicker. Maybe uncertainty, maybe something else. "What are you talking about?" he said. I looked at him calmly. "Those documents you had me sign 8 months ago." He went quiet. "The ownership transfer," I continued, "wasn't completed correctly. There were procedural errors, the kind that look right on the surface but don't hold up legally." I watched him understand it in real time, watched his mind work through what I was saying and arrive at the conclusion I had already arrived at weeks earlier. Because yes, I had found out, not that night, not from him. I had found out on my own, quietly, about a month before that night when a mutual contact mentioned something in passing that didn't add up. I started pulling threads, hired someone to review every document, and what I found was that the ownership change Marcus thought he had secured was legally incomplete, which meant that at the time of the sale, on paper, in law, in the way that actually matters, the company was still 50-50. He had sold something that wasn't fully his. He had received money that wasn't fully his. I picked up my jacket from the back of the chair. I said, "You should get ahead of this, before it becomes something harder to fix." He didn't stand up, didn't call after me, didn't say a single word. I walked to the door, opened it, stepped outside into the cool night air, and I did not look back. Not because I was angry, not because I hated him, but because there was nothing left to look at. The version of my brother I trusted for 30 years was not in that room. He had stopped being that person months ago, quietly, in small decisions I didn't know about, and I had already done my grieving for that, alone, privately, during the weeks before that night, while I was figuring out what had actually happened. The legal process that followed was not dramatic. It was paperwork and phone calls and a series of conversations in rooms with people wearing nice shoes. But at the end of it, the outcome was exactly what the law said it should be. Half of that sale belonged to me, and eventually, that's what I received. Marcus and I haven't spoken since. I don't think about revenge. I don't replay the conversation looking for the moment I should have said something sharper. What I think about sometimes is that Tuesday afternoon, the sandwich, the casual shrug, the folder slid across a desk like it was nothing. That was the moment he made his choice, and everything that came after was just the consequence of it. Here is what I've come to understand about betrayal. It is almost never loud. It doesn't arrive with shouting or obvious signs. It arrives in ordinary moments, routine documents, normal conversations. A door opened before you even get out of the car. The people who hurt you most are not strangers. They are the ones who knew exactly how much you trusted them and decided that was an advantage worth using. But here is what they never count on. They never count on you paying attention after the fact. They never count on you being calm enough to look carefully at what happened without letting emotion cloud the details. They never count on the possibility that you've already done the work before they even opened the door. Stay calm, pay attention, know what you're owed. Because calm, in the end, is the most dangerous thing you can be.